What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Glue Guys podcast, our new podcast. I am your host, Ethan Larson, and I'm here with my co-host, Chad. Why don't you introduce yourself to the people?
What's up, everybody? How we doing today? Feeling good, Ethan, we're excited to get this off the ground and get it running. Let's get into it.
All right, so for our first podcast, just going to give a brief little intro to kind of what our whole idea is. Again, the Glue Guys podcast. We're going to go through a wide range of topics, kind of covering all sports. You know, big sports media is kind of a topic of discussion between me and Chad a lot. You know, not really ESPN, places like that, not really doing it for us anymore. So, hopefully we can take a little stab at it ourselves and try and cover a wide range of topics. For our first pod today, we have a soccer topic, a little bit of basketball, some football, which is actually right around the corner. I was looking, and the games are kind of
training
right
camp
there.
has started. Camp has started,
and then a pop culture question at the end, and then kind of see where it's going to go from there. So our first topic in the Glue Guys podcast is going to be some football transfers. All right. So I sent Chad a list of topics before we started recording. We wanted to see two transfers that we want to see, two transfers that we either don't like or don't want to see, and kind of just discussing, why we like them, why we don't like them, and whether we like them from the club's perspective or the player's perspective. So, Chad, why don't you start us off with your first transfer that you want to see this summer?
Yeah, just a quick clarification before we dive any further. I'm assuming most of our listeners are going to be American. And you said football transfers, so I just want them to know football and soccer is really interchangeable for us, depending on the mood we're in. So you're really going to have to be paying attention, stay on your toes. So using context clues, you guys will know what's up. But the first transfer I want to talk about is going to be one for a guy that's actually already rumored to another team, but when I was writing my notes out earlier this week, it wasn't happening. That is Dean Houston, the center back from Juventus. He's going to Bournemouth for about $20 million is supposedly the deal. Obviously, we always make the joke until we see a here we go from Fabrizio, nothing is sealed or delivered at all. But I would really have loved to seen him gone to two clubs, either Brighton in the Premier League or to RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga. Now, I'll start off from the Brighton perspective. I think while they've been able to, they got a new coach in this summer, so it's going to be kind of up in the air to see the style that they're going to be playing. You would think that they would want to continue with an attacking, progressive, possession-style team, considering that's what they've had with the last two managers. Obviously leaned on a lot more with De Zerbi than with Potter, even though Potter was a possession-style coach. And Houston, he fits perfectly with that because he is a center back that can really pass. That's his best attribute right now. 19 years old, spent last season on loan at Roma in the second half of the year. Really didn't play a whole lot, but his loan kind of reminded me of, and you may cringe when I say this, but reminded me of the Levi Colwell loan to Brighton 2 years ago, where it's not that he necessarily racked up a whole bunch of minutes, but he was able to get enough minutes to show flashes that would get people excited. So that's why I think a team like Brighton would make sense. He wouldn't have to come in and start, 35 games his first season. You're going to have, Lewis Dunk, who's really playing that role of that right-sided ball-playing center back for them. Van Hecke has basically turned into an automatic starter for them, over Webster over this past season. So he's got guys in front of him that are going to make it so that he wouldn't have the pressure of starting that much in the beginning of the season and could kind of slowly work himself in kind of into that first year going into the second. So I'm really fascinated to see how he's going to do at Bournemouth. I haven't really been paying attention to their transfer business much. I got to say, though, maybe you can speak about it from more of the Premier League perspective because I know you're Premier League based. What do you think about it between kind of Brighton, Bournemouth? Where do you see kind of those two projects for a player like Houston?
So for me, I like it when players go to situations, especially young players, when they're not having huge expectations right from the jump.
Absolutely.
And very quietly, Brighton and Bournemouth kind of, I wouldn't say switch places, but as far as expectations, there's going to be a lot more expectations on Bournemouth this year than Brighton, surprisingly enough, because Brighton had a down year and they lost their manager. compared to the season before.
Yeah.
But also, Bournemouth had a really, really good season under Gary O'Neill, and as much as we as fans try to temper our expectations and know what kind of size club we are, clubs like Bournemouth will look at clubs like what Villa have done over the past couple of years and what Brighton have done over the past couple of years, and being like, we finished. I think they ended up finished like 10th or 11th around that space. So they're gonna probably be like, if we can go up 9th, 8th, 9th, start knocking on the door of the Conference League, something like that. Why not? Why can't we do that? No one thought we could finish this high in the last season, so why can't we finish a little bit higher, take one step forward? And so going into a club like that, especially a club that has a good young center back in what's his name, Zabanyi, whatever that Ukrainian guy is, he's really, really good, and he's young. And so having another young guy next to him might be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
And especially for their expectations going into next season. But I really like the Brighton shout because, again, like you said, he's not going to be expected to come in and from day one be the guy. He's not going to come in and probably won't even be a starter or even the next center back. Even if they played the 3-back that they played at times last season, that still leaves, guys like Dunk, Webster, Igor, Van Hecke. All those guys would be ahead of him in the pecking order, but he still would play. And he would still
Cup
be a
competition
part of
and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe even play his way into the team, but not be one of those key guys. And I really like that for young players. So I think that Brighton move probably would suit him more. But it's not like Bournemouth. It's not like he's going to a club like Villa or like I'm trying to like Spurs,
Newcastle,
just on the cusp of that like top tier of club where it's like we expect you to right now hit the ground running and expect you to be a Mickey Van de Ven. We expect you to be like how
it's a good show.
Pau Torres came in last year. We're not going to expect you to be a guy like that. And at Bournemouth, he could easily fall under the radar. And, if they don't win their first 3-4 games, then it's still kind of like, we're building, we're doing this, that, and the other. It won't have those massive expectations, but good expectations nonetheless.
Yeah. The only thing I worry about is thinking about, and I just thought of this with the Bournemouth situation, is they did lose Lloyd Kelly in the summer. Or he went to Newcastle on a free. So that's going to be, are they doing this signing expecting him to kind of step into that spot? Lloyd Kelly was really good for Bournemouth last year. Was arguably one of their key reasons, along with Solanke, on why they finished in the position that they finished in. So I think I would just be nervous because exactly like you said about not having the pressure of starting immediately, I would just be nervous of would he kind of have that pressure going into that first season. So we'll see. Enough about my guy, though. Let's switch to you. Give me one that you've got.
Yeah, so this is one where when I originally did the research about a week and a half ago, I was really intrigued by, and then I saw, I think it was Fabrizio that said that he would be interested, he kind of came out and said that he'd be interested in a move away from Manchester City, and that would be Julian Alvarez. I saw him linked with Atletico Madrid, which I really, really like. Because, they lost my GOAT, Alvaro Morata. He's going to be at AC Milan now, so there's definitely going to be some center forward minutes for grabs. Diego Simeone has actually proved himself to be very, very flexible in the recent past, with formations and different personnel and things like that. But so I could easily see a two-striker system, maybe with him and Griezmann, or a system where Griezmann's a little bit more free, either on the wing or underneath Julian Alvarez. I could see those two working together really, really well because in his heyday, Griezmann basically was what Alvarez is now. Like a player that's a good goal scorer, good finisher, maybe a little undersized, but athletic enough to make it not really matter that much. Good finisher, but also a really good creator, a good ball mover, a good presser. And seeing those guys work together, whereas Griezmann's now kind of a secondary forward now more than like the main line leader. What Julian Alvarez would be now, that I think could work really well off each other. Last year in 54 goals in all competitions for Man City, he got 19 goals and 13 assists. There was obviously that extended period of time where Haaland was not in the team through injury. Scored 2 goals in the Copa America, didn't light up the tournament, but he was a good player. and he's ready to be that key player for a big side. He really, really is. I think he's too good to be a backup, even for a club as good as Man City. I mean, if you look at the dearth of talent in the center forward position, I think it's not a bad argument to say he's probably a top 10 center forward in the entire world. And having a guy like that on the bench is, I think, a little bit too much to ask for any player, no matter how selfless they are. And, on Transfermarkt, he was listed, his value was at £75 million or 90 million euros, which I think is maybe a bit too much. But I think if the player is starting to angle for that move, maybe they could cut it down to 65 million pounds, around 80 million euros. And as me and you joked, obviously off the podcast the other day, Atletico Madrid has shown the ability to spend in the market. A lot of people kind of call them, it's Barcelona and Real Madrid up here, traditionally, and then there's Atletico. But Atletico, with that Joao Felix deal, they may be just as inclined to spend 65 million pounds on a player that's proven to be able to, he's a treble winner. He's a guy that could easily score 20 goals in La Liga, and I really, really think if he played up front with Griezmann, then that could be like 20 goals in the league, borderline guaranteed, and he hasn't been very injured in his time in Europe so far.
Fair. I really like it. And, you talked about the kind of maybe the clout that Atletico has in the market. The past 2 seasons, they have not really even had a net spend of higher than 0. Last year they were able to sell Matheus Cunha to Wolves for 50 million, which was a really good sell for them. I don't really know how they got it, because I never was impressed with him with anything he did at Atletico, or really what he's done at Wolves. I haven't seen. But I think the position you're hinting at for them, it's a weird suggestion or it's hard to suggest people for Atletico, because while I agree with you, I think they definitely need someone to help take some of that pressure off Griezmann. I mean, he's been second in minutes for them each of the last 2 seasons in all comps. So I think he's approaching 34 now, and with the style that he plays, with his tracking back and all that, the thing that makes him kind of the player that he is, I can't see him really aging well, past his mid-30s. So it's not going to be a situation where he's in the team for 3 more years, although Simeone, the way he does it, he could be playing guys that are, Axel Witsel got the most minutes for them last year, and he's like 35, so anything is possible. But then at the same time, when you look at it, the investments that Atletico has made in the striker position, not a lot of them have ended up panning out. Matheus Cunha, the only reason that one worked out is because Wolves became desperate to get him, so they were able to flip him for a profit. We talked about Joao Felix, which was kind of the reason that we were talking about Atletico recently. That's been, a horrible transfer, arguably one of the worst of all time. And the Morata deal, I don't feel like anyone was ever super excited about it. Honestly, probably the best striker deal that they've had in the last 5 to 10 years was getting Luis Suarez from Barcelona on, I think it was like $1 million or something like that. It was not quite a free, but it was close to a free. So that's the thing that gives me hesitation. But profile-wise and player-wise, I think you're absolutely spot on with Alvarez. If he's edging for that move, like you said, he's clearly a player who's talented. And I think his biggest deficiency, like you talked about, his athleticism, maybe not as physical, I think that won't be highlighted as much in La Liga compared to the Premier League, where I think the Prem is more about physicality, more about pace, versus La Liga, where I think they still have a high emphasis on like technical ability, being able to movements in tight spaces, things like that. So I think he'll definitely flourish.
That ability to cope with the Premier League, even when you're not really that profile, and then you take that guy out of that league that's more physical. He might be even a guy that's considered, a physical center forward in a league like La Liga. Some of the center backs that they play against. Me and you joke about the Real Madrid back line all the time, but it's like David Alaba, you would not see him playing center back.
No, God, no.
He's a 5'11" guy that's probably like 175 pounds. Yep. He would not be playing center back. Obviously there's guys like Rudiger and there's guys like Araujo who are big center backs, but Jules Koundé played center back in the Premier League for many, many years and was considered one of the best young center backs. Pau Kubarsi is like not a very, he's tall, but he's not a very big guy. He's considered, the probably the premier center back prospect in the league right now. And guys like Andreas Christensen, who's 160 pounds soaking wet. Those are the guys that you're going to come up against week in, week out in La Liga. And, his physical profile might not be impressive, but it's definitely going to be more than what a lot of La Liga center halves are used to.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to your second suggestion. I want to see if you got a little bit more experimental, or if you get stuck with a little bit more of the mainstream names.
I don't know. I haven't heard a lot about this guy, but the clubs I've suggested him to are definitely high-profile clubs, and that'd be Brian Brobbey, the Ajax striker.
I was in on Brian Brobbey in 2018 time. I was in him.
Dude, I'm telling you, I've had some runs with him on FIFA in the past, and I'm not talking EA. I'm talking about FIFA. That's how far back it was.
3 minutes that he got for the Netherlands after
in the Euros.
After Ollie Watkins scored the winner for England. I liked that move.
That's the worst. It's like, hey, just go on and bring us back into the tournament. You haven't done anything the entire time, but do that. But the two clubs I've suggested for him are Liverpool and Newcastle. Now, the Liverpool suggestion, I think, makes a lot of sense, actually, because when you look on, and, I know this is our first episode, people don't be frightened. We're not going to be statistics like analytic people down to the T. But I do think they're useful in certain situations. His analytical profile, the number one player he matched up with most was Santi Jimenez, who was the striker for Arne Slot last year at Feyenoord, or for the past 2 seasons at Feyenoord. So I think I could see him playing in a similar role. He's a type of number 9 that's actually really physically imposing, and you see that more so in the Eredivisie, just because like we were just talking about the lack of physicality in La Liga. Like, take it even a few steps lower before you get to the Eredivisie. But he's able, even still at I think 20 or 21 years old, he's still able to be physically dominant over those center backs in that league. And he's also able to bring players in. Like, the thing about the guys he was playing with, Steven Bergwijn, who was playing off the left for Ajax a lot, he was able to bring him into play, creating goal-scoring opportunities for him. He has a really high XG and expected assists, for a guy of his age. So I think that could make a lot of sense. And he's a willing runner, too, in the press. He's a willing runner in the press, which is something that Liverpool has kind of made their calling card over the past couple of years. And when they've struggled, that's kind of been one of the main reasons why over the past couple of years, is because they haven't been able to press effectively. So what do you think about Brobbey or the Liverpool link?
Yeah, that center forward spot for Liverpool has been kind of weird, really, the whole time I've watched soccer, ever since 2013. I mean, obviously they had Luis Suarez there for a little while at the beginning of when I started watching them, but and he was obviously amazing, but then he moves to Barca, and then it's been kind of strange ever since then. It's been Ricky Lambert, and then Daniel Sturridge had that one really good year when they almost won the league alongside Suarez, and then even when Suarez left, I mean, guys and then Roberto Firmino comes in. He's not even really a center forward. He's just the highest central player, kind of, for the most part. And then now they have, guys like Darwin or Cody Gakpo, guys that are creative and will run and can do stuff on the dribble and can be dangerous, but aren't really that vocal point, true center forward like Brian Brobbey. I mean, Brian Brobbey's built like a brick. I mean, he's 22 years old, but he's, for the most part, probably the most physically gifted player out there on the pitch 90% of the time. And seeing him be able to play with a lot of creative midfielders and wingers, I think could be very, very interesting, because that's how I feel like having a guy like that, even though he scored 18 goals in the Eredivisie last season, that could be a guy where it's he's our center point, and now that's going to allow Szoboszlai to hit 10 in the league. That's going to allow McAllister to hit 8 in the league. That's going to allow Gakpo to get 12, and Salah is just going to score between 17 and 23 goals just because he's one of the best players in Premier League history. He's that good. And so it's kind of, obviously I'm an Arsenal fan, so it's kind of not this past season, but the season before, where we didn't have that goal scorer, but it was if Saka's hitting 15 and Martinelli's hitting 10 and Gabby Jesus hitting 12 and Martin Odegaard's hitting 12, and if you just score these goals by committee, at some point it's just going to become overwhelming. If you're getting goals from so many different places, it's kind of hard for teams to be because I mean, in years past it's been like, hey, if we can contain Salah or just turn him into a creator, then we can kind of silence them.
Yeah,
and now it's like, all right, well, you have Salah, who's a goal threat. Cody Gakpo showed in the Euros that he can be more of a goal threat. I think Dominic Szoboszlai, as talented as he is, if he's closer to goal, he can be much more of a goal threat than he was this past season.
Yeah.
And, if they can bring in that elite defensive midfielder, again, who that guy is, I don't know. But I think if they bring that guy in, then it can allow their attacking midfielders and their actual attackers to be much more involved in the goal scoring. I mean, even guys like Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott, like if those guys are getting 5 each, which is not a lot, but if you're adding 10 more goals from the midfield, that's going to become pretty insurmountable, and that's when you start thinking like triple digits of goals scored in the league, which it's going to be hard to keep them off the top 3 if they're going to be putting up numbers like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think just real quickly before we move on to your next guy, I think Broby also could help unlock, if there is anything to unlock with Darwin Nunez playing on the left-hand side, I think that could maybe make a little bit of sense because he, like we said, he can kind of let Darwin be that inside forward. Now, can you play with 2 guys who really want to be inside forwards? Because that's what Salah is going to do on the right-hand side. So, that would be something to see, but I think he could help get a better version out of Nunez than what we've seen, which isn't that high of a bar.
Well, I mean, that kind of it could be perfect for them if Trent ends up staying. I know he's been linked with you guys at Real Madrid a little bit, which I don't think is going to happen. But I think if you're getting Trent overlapping, if you get Andy Robertson fit, and then they're probably going to bring in some other left back. They have that Scottish guy they signed like 2 years ago as like a backup left back, and I don't know, he's been like hurt for 2 years. I don't know. His name is like something.
I didn't know if you were talking about. I know Simicast is like their backup, but
yeah,
I guess it's not even him.
Yeah, I think he has he put his nail in the coffin with some of his performances, especially in the League this past season.
Yeah, because they kind of needed him sneakily.
That's what I'm saying. He just wasn't at the level. But if they have those guys getting higher, the amount of running that they have in that midfield would be able to cover in wide areas, and obviously Virgil, as much as I try not to glaze him too much. I mean, he's one of the best center backs in the world. He's going to be able to cover that ground. He's going to be able to keep it tight. Alisson, in my opinion, is the best goalkeeper in the world. So even if you're attacking with like 6 or 7 players at a time with your fullbacks and your forwards and a couple of your midfielders, they're not going to concede a crap ton of goals. Like, even though Arne Slot's new to the league, I don't think they're just going to wake up and just concede like 60 goals in the league this year. It's just not going to happen because their quality is too good. And they're going to be in the opposition half too much to be conceding like a crap ton of goals like that. So I really, really like that suggestion. My suggestion, I went a little bit into the bag of what does my team need?
There you go.
This is a guy that everyone's heard of now, maybe not a couple months ago, but everyone's heard of now that Arsenal should, based on the price tag I've seen, should really, really be looking at, and that's Lamine Yamal. I'm just kidding. That's
shit. I was like, wait, what?
And that's Nico Williams. Everyone knows who he is now. And what I really like about him is I didn't see if it was a release clause or if it was just what Bilbao were looking for, but I saw £50 million.
58, is the release. 58 is the release, or 58 million euros is the release clause,
which is £50 million, which is, for the record, what we signed Ben White for, and everyone thought we were the craziest people of all time for it. And I was the best right back in the league, but that's neither here nor there.
Keeping receipts.
So, Nico Williams for £50 million, about £50 million, 8 goals and 16 assists in all comps last season, which is, for a Bilbao side that I think about people of a certain age range, people that kind of started watching football a little bit more recently, think that like Athletic Bilbao are like a big club and they're like always in the Europa League and they're this, that, and the other. They are not a big club at all. Like,
they just won the Copa del Rey, I think, for the first time this past year.
Exactly, and they're one of the clubs that have been in the league, in La Liga, ever since its inception. But they're not like, they're basically like what Everton are to the Premier League. Like, they're always in the league, but they're never really doing stuff in the league.
Yeah, they're in it, but they're not a part of the league.
Correct. And so putting up those 8 goals and 16 assists in all competitions for them. Obviously, the 2 goals and the assist in the Euros had the goal in the final. Not the winner, because your boy scored the winner.
Mikel.
Yeah, Mikel
Oyarzabal.
Yeah,
God.
and he had the second most. Nico Williams had the second most assists in all of La Liga, and I think he's only 21 or 22 years old. That really fits the age profile that Arsenal's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that he just turned 22. The thing that I really like is that he can kind of fit into that mold of like, and as much as I hate it, if you want to compete with Man City, you have to become them in a certain sense. You have to have those guys that's like, hey man, I'm not going to tell you you're starting every week because you're not. But you have to be good enough to when you are starting, then you are at that level. Guys like Jack Grealish. If you told people 2, 3, 4 years ago, hey, Jack Grealish is going to be at a club where he's not a guaranteed starter, people would be like, then he's an idiot. But now he's won 3 Premier Leagues and a Champions League and things like that. And if you say to a guy like Nico Williams, hey, you're not going to start every week. You're not going to be our best player. You're not going to, like, the play isn't going to run through you. Initially, it might sound like, why would he go there? Why wouldn't he just want to go somewhere where he can be the main man or stay at Bilbao? But when he then does come on and have a run where he starts 15, 20 games in a row or a good amount of games in the league in a row at least, then people are going to be like, oh, yeah, of course, he should have gone there. But our wide attackers right now are Saka, Trossard, Martinelli, as like the guys that are really our impact players. Mm-hmm. Then after that, it's kind of like Reece Nelson, who looks like he may be on the way out. Emile Smith-Rowe looks like he's definitely on the way out. And then like maybe like a little bit of Ethan Nwaneri, who's our 17-year-old player, the guy that broke the record for the youngest player in English top flight history. I think at this point his career is probably going to be more of a wide player and then move central as he gets a bit older and more mature. But this is what we need to not overplay a guy like Saka. For the past 3 years now, Saka has played every minute of every game, and you can see it at times. I don't think it's even a beginning of the season, end of season thing, but there's just times where it's like the middle of March, and it's like Saka just doesn't have it today because he's played every single game for the past 4 months outside of like maybe a Carabao Cup game or something like that.
And I mean, he's been first or second minutes the last 4 seasons. So.
And when you have a guy like Nico Williams, where it's like, all right, we're going to start with Nico Williams and Leandro Trossard, and then we're going to bring Martinelli and Saka off the bench. Like, that is going to be a pain in the ass to play against, and that's how you win leagues, when you can bring those guys on the 70th minute and get that goal when you're away at Molineux playing against Wolves, and it's 1-1, and you're like, we're knocking on the door, but we can't score. Boom, you're bringing on Saka and you're bringing on Martinelli, or you're bringing on Nico Williams and Saka or something like that. That is how you win the league, is by winning those games 2-1, not letting them become draws or letting them become losses. That's how you win the league. And the wages could be a little bit of an issue because, as me and you talked about the other day, he's like one of the highest earners in the entire league, not even just for Bilbao. Like, he's by far and away.
I think he's 150, 160 pounds a week, or 160,000 a week.
Exactly,
right now.
160,000 pounds a week for a guy that just turned 22 is very, very high. But considering that we're a club whose highest earner is Kai Havertz, I don't think that should be too much of an issue. But again, offloading guys like Smith Rowe, Nuno Tavares, Sambi Lokonga, Aaron Ramsdale,
Reece
Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, offloading guys like that, I don't think it'll be too much to ask, even if he asks for a wage bump to be like, hey, here's 200,000 pounds a week, and you're going to be one of our wingers for the next 10 years. I really don't think that's too much to ask, and it's a guy that, again, probably should be a starter for just building our best 11, like with our best 11 players in each position, but could be used as an impact sub in the Champions League or later in the year in the league when we just need something off the bench. And so that's a guy that I really, really would like to bring to the Emirates.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think the only thing is, I don't know, it'll be hard for you guys to match Barcelona's desperation. I think right now that's the club that's going after him the hardest. Now, the thing that you guys have over them is you guys can definitely afford to pay the release clause. Yeah, afford to pay the release clause and give him, like you said, you're going to have to give him a bump. I think what I've been reading is between 200 and 250,000 is what he's asking for a week, which, like you said, that's a lot. But at the same time, you have to invest a lot to compete with Man City right now with where they're at. So if Williams would be able to, because the thing is, I think if he goes to Barcelona, he's just a guaranteed starter for every game that he's fit. On the left hand side for them, they've been crying out for someone on the left for literally probably really since Neymar left. Honestly, they haven't been able to fill that spot. So I think it'll be hard to match Barcelona's desperation, but if he gets fed up and says financially he's not willing to wait and then just wants to get everything cleared up, then I could see Arsenal making a lot of sense, especially if you guys get rid of Smith Rowe. I saw reported $35 million from Fulham, which to me is a godsend for you guys. I think that's great. I mean, he's a talented player, but that's crazy to me considering he hasn't really
someone
played.
that hasn't done anything for 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. The last time he really was playing for you guys, no offense, you guys really weren't good. I think you were finishing. I think there was the year you guys finished 8th. So if you're able to kind of upgrade to Nico Williams, then I think that just puts you guys even closer and allows you to challenge on all fronts more effectively. Last year I think in the Champions League you guys kind of ran out of steam, and that also affected how you finished in the Cups and finished the league. So now you add more depth, continue to build it out. I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, especially when we should have gotten that pin against Bayern. So, transfers that we don't like, all right?
Yeah.
I'm going to start with this one because this is one that I really, really, really feel strongly about.
Absolutely.
And this is kind of going along with what you just said. Elliot Anderson to Forest. Okay,
Yeah.
You might not have seen this one.
Their record transfer, I believe.
Record transfer, £35 million.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they know something that I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they do. They know a lot that I don't know. If I were to ask you how many goals in the league Elliot Anderson has scored in his career in the Premier League, how many goals do you think it would be?
Oh, maybe 2. Maybe.
He
maybe
has not
1.
scored a goal in the Premier League.
Yeah. I mean, that's not even surprising, sadly. He just... Go ahead.
And he's not quite an attacker, but he is an attacking-minded mid. I mean, he played on the left for them for a decent amount of his appearances this past year. And again, me and you love joking about we love when you can do the flicks and the tricks and the this and the that. But at the end of the day, if you're an attacking player, I need goals, I need assists, I need you.
Yeah.
And even he only had 2 assists last season. He got booked more times than he had assists.
Yeah. I don't understand the move at all, really. I mean, the only thing that makes me kind of be like, okay, maybe I'll not write it off immediately is because I think these are the exact same vibes everyone felt when they signed Morgan Gibbs-White from Wolves.
Yes.
It's too expensive. This doesn't make any sense. Kind of the exact same thing you were just talking about. What is he? He's not really a winger. He's not really a midfield player. He's he has to be a number 10 in a world where not a lot of teams play with a number 10, and that kind of complicates things. But I think Gibbs-White has been able to be a really good signing for Forest, is a really good player. I'm not saying him and Elliot Anderson are comparable as far as the talents, but, that's the only reason I'm not going to completely kill it immediately. I don't know. I don't even think he necessarily guaranteed walks into Nottingham Forest midfield 3. If you're talking about kind of Gibbs-White as the most advanced in a 3, Sangare or Danilo or even both of them playing in the more reserve role, then you're still talking about he's competing with Ryan Yates, who I know didn't have a great season, guys like Nicolas Dominguez and then Danilo kind of for those 3 spot or for that 3rd spot in the midfield. So
even if you want to say Gibbs-White as a winger now, even if you park him on the left, I still don't even know if Elliot Anderson starts or. Which I'm kind of contradicting what I said earlier about for younger players. I don't like it when they have to come in and be the guy. But if you're paying him,
I think we're talking about it just more from the team perspective.
Yeah, if you're going to spend £35 million and break your club transfer fee, it better well be for a guy that you expect is going to at least make an impact. Maybe not be the best player, maybe not is going to set the world alight, but there's some evidence that this guy has this. And I don't know what Elliot Anderson's, what has he shown? I mean, he played 21 times in the Prem last year. And he got 2 assists.
It's the Luka. It's a smaller version of the Luka Hernandez theory. If you sign a guy for your record fee and he doesn't really change the trajectory of your top, 11 to 15 players, that's not a good move. That's not a good move at all.
Yeah, shit. So. Based on that, maybe Atletico shouldn't sign Julian Alvarez because their 2 record transfers are Luka Hernandez and Joao Felix. So, 2 of maybe my least favorite moves of the past 10 years.
No, was Luka? Well, Luka Hernandez was their record sale. I don't think he was their record buy.
Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say
Bayern. The
Bayern. Yeah, he's still their. Was kind of outrageous. He's still their 2nd highest transfer to date. So that's awesome. I'm gonna. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but I want to hear. Are you staying Premier League or are you going on the
No,
continent?
I'm going abroad. You know me. I got to go on the continent for this one. I'm actually going heavy Bundesliga actually for all my ones that I didn't like. The first one I'm gonna do is Sehu Guirassy to Dortmund.
I
I
saw
just
this
don't.
one. I saw
I
this one.
just look when you look on it on the surface, you're saying you got a striker who scored 20 something goals in, or who was the second top scorer in the Bundesliga for an 18 million euro release clause. Like, what's the problem? Like on the surface, it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything, or it looks like a hell of a transfer. I guarantee you some people have it as transfer that they love. The thing for me is he's like a year or two younger than Nicholas Fulkrug, who you just bought last summer and
Yeah, he's
looked really
28.
good. Yeah, like and Fulkrug I think is 30. So you're sitting here, you're continuing to invest the squad in older players, and I just don't like that for Dortmund, especially when you have a guy like Yusufa Mokoko who is still only 19 years old, sitting on the bench. Is not playing. I know it's crazy.
Is
It's
he?
crazy. Exactly. Like he's been a pro for 10 years. It feels like.
No, I'm saying is he
Um,
19? Is the question that
Oh,
needs to be answered.
hey, I don't, I can't confirm or deny that. I wasn't there, but, but yeah, I mean, and he's not getting any game time. Didn't play for them at all. They've still got Sebastian Aller, who I mean is pretty much, I would assume, guaranteed to leave at this point. Um,
Just
but
like seems like very much like a by committee. Like
Yeah,
we're
it
just
wasn't
gonna.
a necessary, and that's another thing. Like Gurasi, is he a guaranteed better player than Fulkrug? I don't think so. Yes, he had an amazing season, but that's one season. The guy's 28. And I know he put up good numbers the year before that in France, or the past couple years before that in France, but he has never been a transfer commodity for a top level club like what Dortmund fancy themselves to be. So I don't like this move. He's going to be on high wages because anytime it's a low release clause, everyone knows they make up for it with the agent fees and the wages. So you're investing a lot in a 28-year-old when I feel like you could just be playing the guy who's come through your academy, who I think is really good in Mokoko. Who I mean, look, I hope he ends up getting a transfer this window just so that way he can go somewhere where he can play because
Yeah,
I
I mean
want to see him
the
play.
fee only ended up being 18 million euros,
Yep.
which is again like you said. I mean, especially in today's market, is almost nothing. But
Yeah.
like when you have those three or you have, like you said, four guys. When you got Makoku, you got Fulkrug, you got Aller, you got Garassi now coming in, and it's like
Yeah.
at what point? This kind of reminds me of the Christoph Piątek move a couple years ago,
Jesus.
where he scored like a goal a game in the first half of the Serie A season, got the
Mm-hmm.
AC Milan move, and I didn't confirm this, but I think he never scored again. And it's just like I mean, he was 28 and 28 in the league this past season. I think he scored 2 goals in the cup as well, and that's a very very good season, but. I would have liked, like you said, to see something where it's just like one step up. Like even if he got a move to a club that finished just above, like upper mid table in the Bundesliga, or maybe even a move back to France, something like that, where it was like, because as much as I love to disparage the French league, like I feel like he would really really light that up. I just don't know if. It's difficult because you don't want to say a guy hasn't proven it because he literally just scored almost 30 goals in 28 games.
Yeah.
But
But I mean, it's
like
1 year.
seeing a guy do that one time again, you said at almost 30 years old is completely different than seeing a guy do that when he's 19 and he puts up
Yeah.
a goal a game in the league. And so it's
Especially
it's a weird
factoring in
one.
especially factoring in the Bundesliga tax that comes with attackers. Obviously he's staying in the league, so it might not be as prominent, but still, when you're going from the attack being built around you to not, I don't know. I could see it being. I just feel like Dortmund should have been more ambitious, more forward thinking with their moves, and I want to see him switch over to more youth. Like I think they have. This is just overall PSA about Dortmund. I think they have a lot of youth that needs to be put in a position to contribute for them. Like Tom Roth at left back, I think can be really good. Jamie Bino Gittins at left wing, and he's been playing a lot for them in the preseason. Chill. I mean, but Bino Gittins has been playing a lot for them in the preseason. Has been looking really good off that left hand side. So I don't know. And then now it's like they might sell Adeyemi to Juve. So I don't get it at all.
The way I feel like their way forward is being able to play both ways. And if you have those guys like Fulkrug and now Girassi in there, you're going to be able to have like a central figure for when you're dominating the ball in the Bundesliga against lower or mid-table sides. But then when you get into the Champions League and you're playing against the big dogs,
on the
if I'm
counter,
like a team like Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man City, whoever, I don't want to look up and see Bino Gittins, Adeyemi, and Mokoku in their front line. I don't want to play against that because
it's a lot of
I'm gonna have
energy,
80%
a lot of
ball,
running.
and as soon as we lose it, they're basically having a shot on our goal.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that, and I think they should lean into more having like, I mean, obviously wingers have to be athletic in today's day and age, but kind of just leaning into just like, hey, we are going to be a team that can be anything. And like you said, this is probably going to alienate Mokoku. He's going to want to leave, and now that leaves you with three pretty immobile forwards. I mean, Girassi isn't...
Who are all late 20s to early 30s.
Yeah, and you're kind of undermining what you can do against bigger teams, which I'm not going to say Dortmund gets together in the club and being like, hey, we want to win the Champions League this year, but it's definitely something that you want to do. If you can challenge like they showed they could last year, then you're going to want to challenge. Your fans are going to want to challenge. The players are going to want to challenge, and they're not going to want to... Not saying that the players aren't good, but they're not going to look up and be like, hey, Fulkrug is what's going to get us through Real Madrid, or Fulkrug is what's going to get us through Bayern Munich in the league, or in the cup. So, very, very weird move, and kind of going against what you just said about wanting a little bit more youth. I just wanted to quickly mention the Lenny Yoro move, which has been highly publicized now. I don't really want to speak on it too much. 62 million euros, 52 million pounds. I just don't like it for the player because of what we talked about earlier, about having that pressure on him immediately. The back line of Man United has been so out of whack. Martinez is never fit. Varane just left. The good news is they re-signed Johnny Evans on a year-long deal, so they have that locked up.
He played a bunch of minutes for them last year is the crazy part.
Exactly.
I guarantee he was one of their three most used defenders. Easily.
Yeah, and then Kambuala left. I don't think Lindelof is even real anymore. So like all these things, it's just.
And
like,
he's rumored to leave too, anyway.
Yeah, and like you could very easily look up in a month from now and say their starting back line is Lisandro and Lenny Yoro. And I've only seen Lenny Yoro play a couple times in European games, but it's just seeing him, like, they're not going to be able to play against people like Dom Solanke, like Raul Jimenez, like Mateta, who I'm not even saying are the best players in the world, but just those type of profile players are going to dominate against Man United just by those profiles. He might be a good technical defender. He's a good passer. He's athletic. I get that. But relying on an 18-year-old to be maybe even the stalwart of your back line, again, based on the instability, is not going to be – I don't really like it for him. I don't think it's fair on him. But that's not who I wanted to talk about. Very quickly, I wanted to mention the Joshua Zirkzee move, also to Man United, which I also don't like. 11 goals and 4 assists in the league last year, 12 and 6 in all comps. He's a good passer, and he's got good creative numbers and good pressing numbers, which I really like. However, to me, it's just more of the same. He played 5 minutes in the Euros. You know, I think he came on with Brian Brobby, actually.
He did.
England. And I just think it's more of the same for Man United. And I saw this as an Arsenal fan where it's like, we can't afford, or we don't have the stat. I mean, I don't know how Man United doesn't have the stature anymore, but it's like we don't have the stature or the money to get like this guy. So we're going to get this guy who's young and, you know, who's hungry, who's whatever. It's like, didn't you just do that last summer with Rasmus Højlund, who I think me and you both like? I don't understand why you're getting another guy who has like the Rasmus Højlund, maybe not player profile, but as far as like what he's going to mean to the club, the same idea. Not an elite player, not someone that's going to come in and hit the ground running and you're expecting to score 20, 25 goals. Someone just like, well, he can create and he presses and he's young and he's excited and he's hungry. That's kind of what I see when I see this Josh Zirkzee move. And even if he puts up like 10 goals in the Premier League, which I think is a pretty decent first season, I don't think anyone's going to look around and be like, oh, that Joshua Zirkzee move was really good. I'm glad that we got that move in so we get 10 extra goals out of the striker position. And it's like, I just don't think that United is going to be happy. I don't think the club or the fans are going to be happy if that's what it ends up. And if they want to get back to what they were, they need to start either doing one of two things. Either saying, we are not worried about this season, or saying, we have to start aiming higher. Because right now they're stuck in this weird middle ground where I just talked to your boy Floyd the other day saying, I think that we're going to finish in the top 4. He said that he actually told me that they're going to finish above Arsenal.
Come on.
So I was like, okay. And you can't have that sort of mentality from at least some of your fans. And I don't think that's a novel take, but also be bringing in players that are basically unproven at the top level over and over again.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of seeing I think it's kind of a combination of some of the other moves we've talked about so far. It's what are you actually buying? Are you buying a guy who you think is going to be your center forward starter? In that case, I don't like the move. But if you're talking about, and you may laugh at this, the second half of Ten Hag's first season, when they signed Weghorst on loan, they looked like a better team when he was in the team.
I like the Weghorst move. I don't know why it got so panned. Seriously.
Yeah, like and I think Xerxes can be, obviously isn't going to be the same physical guy, not quite the same in the air, but I think can be a version of that type of player. I think between him and Højlund, they can kind of give two different profiles, which I like. I like when a team can do multiple things, like we talked about with Dortmund. When you just have guys in the same positions who are the exact same type of player, a team doesn't have to prepare for a lot. They have to prepare for one style. Now with United, they are going to have Europa League football this year, so they're going to be in 4 competitions. So I think there will be minutes to go around. And when Højlund's your only real number 9 that's played any real senior football, and it's just been 1 year for you guys, I don't mind signing a guy, for $34 million that's, going to come in and just be a depth option. So I agree with you in the sense that he's not, obviously he's not an elite striker, isn't going to be, even if he put up 10 Premier League goals, I'd be shocked. But, really, if he put in like 10 to 15 goals in all competitions, I think that'd be a great signing. That'd be considered a great signing for his first year. But if he's able to do that, great. If not, I think he just allows them to play more of the style Ten Hag wants, and also not run Højlund into the ground so early in his career. So I'm not mad at it.
So did you say your second signing that you don't like?
I didn't yet. I'm going to just mention it real quickly, though, because it's whatever. Xavi Simons to Bayern or Leipzig on loan. I don't like it for either. Really, I'm looking at this mostly from the PSG perspective. I think PSG have just had a weird window. Like, they're talking about signing people off the left, talking about signing Victor Osimhen for 120. It's like, dude, I don't know how you feel about Simons, but I really feel like he's a guy who can be a difference maker at the Champions League level, like already right now. So I don't know why you don't just bring him back. Then all of a sudden you can play Ramos and Kolo Muani through the middle. Not saying either one of them have lit up the league so far, even, because they definitely haven't. But it gives you 2 options, for another year. And then off the left you have Simons, you have Bradley Barcola, who I thought really flashed in the Champions League at the end of the year. And then on the right,
the Euros too when he came on.
He was. No, but I was just laughing because at first I thought he was getting the Xerxes treatment, but then I was like, nah, actually he played. He actually did play. He hit that penalty.
That nose injury.
Yeah, I was gonna say he hit that penalty against who was that? Who'd they go into that PK shootout against? Yeah, Portugal. But yeah, so I just don't see why PSG are so adamant. And the thing is, they're so adamant about getting rid of him just specifically on a 1-year loan. Like, because there was rumors that Bayern were going to give a loan with a 90 million obligation to Bayern. It's like, why would you not just cash in on that? And then Leipzig are just going a straight 1-year loan, it looks like that's where he's leaning to go back there for another year. So I don't get it all from PSG's perspective. I think they've had a really weird window. I don't see how they haven't brought in a center back. But, I don't know. Quickly, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I've never really gotten the Xavi Simons thing with PSG because I watched him play against Arsenal this year, and there were times where he was probably the best player on the pitch. And again, not trying to be like that Arsenal fan, but against a team who was probably one of the 5 best teams in Europe this past year, he was probably the best player on the pitch maybe not for whole games, but like for significant like half or like 60-minute stretches. Like he was really really good, and he's dangerous. He's a goal threat. He's creative. I mean, he seems like he has a little bit of a bitchy attitude, but like I don't understand how you can say like I'm gonna write off a whole player because like he bitches and complains a little bit, because I mean that's the heritage of PSG, and that's the heritage. And
Exactly.
yes, you know who does that, by the way? Bitches and complains and stuff
All
like
the
that.
best players,
Okay.
Vinny.
Vinny does that. Ronaldo
Mbappe.
has done it his entire career.
I mean, hell, Messi's done it a whole
Messi
bunch.
does
Like,
it. He yells at referees. He yells at everyone because that's what the elite players do. So you can't just say he's a behavior issue because he does this, that, and the other. But especially in a club like PSG, who have done nothing but bring in head cases left, right, and center.
But the weird thing is they don't even really have any head cases right now.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're cleansing
Yeah.
themselves. And they're like, we can't bring in Jamie Simmons, even though he'd probably be our best player.
He would be the best. I was going to say he would easily be their best attacker. Easily would be their best attacker. So
Yeah. So I don't
know.
really get it, but I mean, if he really does not want to be in Paris and they don't want him there, I can submit our bid
for
right
him.
now for the Arsenal if he wants to come to us.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't get it.
So, moving on from the international soccer, I just had a very quick talking point that I wanted to talk to you about basketball, because obviously it's a pretty dead period right now. I was kind of thinking about Summer League, and obviously there's been a lot of Brian James talk. I'm not gonna mention his name after just now. So,
Thank goodness.
but just the overall Summer League, to me it doesn't matter at all. So it's kind of whatever. But I just a broader question of like the social media machine and how it affects young hoopers. For me, I think this is something that I noticed more when especially players from smaller schools started going very, very high in the draft. Because I think for right now, like at this point, I think all you need is like one or two good highlight tapes, like a good like Max Preps page and things like that, and then you're just gonna go top 10 in the draft, regardless of where you go in college and what you do in the NBA or in the college season. And now let me take a step back. I'm not saying that like anyone can just wake up, make two good highlight tapes, and then have this happen to them. But based on some of the guys we've seen in the recent past, it just seems like those. And this also kind of affects college hoops in general, because me and you have been saying for years now that it's just borderline unwatchable. Like it's not a good product. And I think a lot of it is because everyone just knows I'm going to pull up on campus for 6 months. I'm going to throw up some jumpers, probably make some plays, and then I'm going to the NBA. Even if I'm not going first round. It's not even the guys that are like guaranteed top 5 locks. It's like, well, worst case scenario, I go undrafted and then I'll sign for a G League team and kind of go from there. So how do you think, again, quickly, or you can expand on it a little bit, like do you think the social media machine is good, getting more exposure for these young hoopers, or do you think it's kind of had a negative impact in seeing that all of them, because you coached AU as well, Chad did, so you've kind of seen that a little bit more intimately, and high school at a
Hampton
Christian school, and do you think you've seen that have a positive impact of people getting more exposure than they ever have before and really getting their name out there, or do you think it's negative and they kind of play to that more or rely on that more than actual playing basketball?
Yeah, I think it's, with a lot of things that, and we'd actually kind of just had this specific conversation a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago. A lot of times you can put situations into 3 different buckets. There are some people who, I guess in this specific situation, there are some kids who are going to be good kids no matter what. Doesn't matter if they're around the social media part or not. They're just going to be good kids, whether it's the way they were raised, just them as people, whatever. They're just going to be good kids. There are those guys who are, and when I say like good or bad, like I'm not sitting here talking about like break the law, whatever. I'm just talking about them as like guys who you would, guys who you would want on a winning situation, like on a competent basketball team and all that stuff. So there are other guys who are going to be, maybe not the hardest working guys, or like not great for the team and all that stuff, and they're going to be not great no matter what. And then the 75 to 80% is the ones that are going to be influenced by stuff like this, the social media aspect of it, all this stuff. I think it's a weird situation because it started off as social media, or like when I first got on the sports Twitter, and I think Twitter is really the catalyst for it when you're talking about social media wise. In 2015, 2016 timeframe, we were just having that kind of following amongst the stars. You know, like you couldn't figure out, like in 2016, no one knew what Kyle Korver was doing on Tuesday night. You know, like that just wasn't happening. No one was following him. Now all of a sudden, you've got high school guys who, you know, have full documentaries coming out about them, and it's like, oh shit, I'm just going overseas to hoop, but I'm still going to have this whole documentary put out. And while I think it's a great thing that there is the ability for that type of access, I just think it's a fair question to ask, what point is considered too much? You know, too much with anything. When is it becoming to saturate the market for that situation? I think my favorite example of this is, you know me. You know me. I love food. So it's like the Thanksgiving meal. Thanksgiving meal is awesome on Thanksgiving. It is, you know, the day after even is good. 2 days after even is great. But if you had Thanksgiving food 365 days a year, it wouldn't be as good. It wouldn't feel as special. You wouldn't be dying to make that leftover turkey sandwich 2 days later. You know, you just, whatever it is, it just wouldn't be as special. And that's what I feel like the social media has turned into for basketball, you know, because anybody can kind of get that exposure, whether it's warranted or not. So I think it's kind of our responsibility, I guess, for lack of a better term, as fans, to kind of monitor what we're actually consuming and how we're consuming it. You know, like I always blame people where it's like, oh, you know, a stat will come out or something will come out and it'll be like, oh, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean for the grand scheme of NBA history? It's like, well, it just means exactly what it says, you know? It just means that this guy put a team together and they put out a documentary. Doesn't mean he's going to be the greatest thing ever. It doesn't mean he's going to be the worst thing ever. It just means what it is. So if I had to fall on one side or the other, I'm actually going to say I like it, because it gives young people the opportunity to start to get those reps in life early. You know, as we get older, and us, you know, I mean, you were, of course, a big-time college athlete, but not quite to the level of some of these guys. But it, you know, later on in life, you get those reps of what's it like to be in front of people. What's it like, you know, when everyone kind of has a spotlight on you and all. I mean, everybody, you know, is all relative for people like us, but you know, when you have that spotlight on you, what's it going to be like?
Yeah, and it's kind of cliched, but I did see it on either Instagram or Twitter or one of the two, but it was really interesting when I read it. It isn't something that I would really think that I would attach myself to, but I saw a quote that said, you know, social media makes us compare other people's highlights to our behind the scenes. And that's really damaging for a lot of young people, because it's like, oh, look at this dude. He's dropping 50 every game, and he got camera crews following him around, and he got this and that and the other. And it's like, but that doesn't show the years and years of hard work that person put in before he got to this, where he was, you know, waking up at 6 a.m. every day to do this, or the other side, the fact that he's not doing that, the fact that that guy isn't taking care of his body the way he should be, the fact that that guy isn't doing the extra workouts when he still should be, and that guy isn't, you know, taking care of his schoolwork and whatever. And it allows us to be like, well, that guy's dropping 50. I'm trying to be like that guy. It's like, well, that's how you end up like Seventh Woods. Like, when's the last time you heard that guy's name? And not even to disparage him personally, but it's like he kind of goes along with that hype machine, that hype train that everyone was like, yo, Seventh Woods. Didn't he commit to North Carolina?
North Carolina, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yo, like he's going to be the next guy. He's going to be the guy after, you know, all these North Carolina guys that have gone the first round. They gone top 5. Seventh Woods is the next guy. And he has a better highlight tape than all of them. Yeah. And then what ended up happening to him.
I mean, look, Imani Bates, you know, on Cleveland, same situation. I mean, that dude was supposed to be the next great thing, you know, coming out of high school, and it was
basketball or national player of the year as a sophomore.
As a sophomore, yeah. And like, there's nothing, and like you said, this isn't disparaging any of those guys, because I mean, shoot, they've still gone on to have more prolific, you know, sports careers. Yeah, exactly. But it's just like, you know, eventually, you know, some of them are going to be wrong, you know, in that situation. So that's a great perspective. I might end up using that. Other people's highlights we compare to our behind the scenes. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Feels like that could be on a good fortune cookie or something.
Exactly. And
So-
then also really quickly, I wanted to get your take on this. Obviously, Olympic basketball is coming around. I've not watched a single second. Actually, that's not true. I watched it when my goat had the game winner against South Sudan. When he had a right-handed layup on the left side, like he was in fifth grade YMCA.
Sixth grade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really liked that. But I just wanted to think just really quick, like, who has the most? I don't think really anyone has too much to gain out of this experience, because if they win, it's kind of like, well, they're the greatest basketball players in the entire world. Of course, they should win. U.S. should always win. This, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
But if they lose, like if they don't win, even if they lose in the gold medal game, like who has the most to lose? Because like obviously, like if LeBron goes out there and goes 0 for 13 and it has 10 turnovers and things like that, he would have the most to lose. But that's more of just scenario based. But just based on like if something goes wrong, or even if they win and this guy just doesn't play or doesn't have any impact, like who can lose, as the kids call it, who can lose that aura?
Calafiore. We're talking. I think it's two people in two different situations. One, when you're talking about all-time aura or legacy, whatever, I think KD actually may have something to lose, just because, like, I feel like among the greatest players, KD is like an easy punching bag, for like the current group of guys,
He's like
because
just outside of the club right now. Like he's the first
yeah.
guy in line that they're holding
Valet.
behind. It's like, hey, hold on. Well, when one of these guys leave, then you can go.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's, look, I mean, we talked about the 99.99 with Seventh Woods and Imani Bates. Like, throw a couple more nines on there and you get to the level that Kevin Durant's at. So, like, we're picking at straws here. But I think him, coming back just for the Olympics, hasn't played any of the previous games, the warm-up games or anything like that. If he comes back and, like, part of it also is the dynamic, the fact that he played with Curry, played for, Steve Kerr, could make it a little bit weird. Like, is Kerr going to feel like he has to play him a whole lot to make it not be like a thing if he doesn't play him?
Well, they probably got beat too, so.
Yeah, and then what if he plays and plays not good, although I don't think that's really possible, because every other time Durant's come back from an injury in the NBA, that's his superpower. Like, he immediately goes back to being a 30-point scorer, doesn't need time to get back into the flow of it.
And the way FIBA is, like, his body type, and
Yeah,
the way that he
yeah,
plays
exactly.
is not really guardable by international guys.
Yeah, exactly. So I would find it hard to believe he would have a bad tournament, but if he did, I think career-wise him. If you're just talking about, like, in the day-to-day space of the NBA, I think Embiid. Embiid has not looked good.
He's taking a lot of flack on social media.
And he's given some weird interviews too, saying like if it wasn't,
he could have been the greatest player of all time if he didn't get hurt.
Yeah, and in that same interview, he was talking about like, well, LeBron was the greatest player in the NBA at one point, but obviously now he's slowing down because of this and that, and it's like
he's about to go play in the Olympics with.
Yeah, exactly. Who's outperformed you in the games that have been playing when you're supposedly in the prime of your career? And like, look, I like Embiid as a player. I think he's awesome. Most of this interview and stuff that we see from him, I actually like, because he's one of the few guys that is kind of just unapologetically himself. And it's really authentic. Like, so many of, we joke all the time on the phone about, what's LeBron, like LeBron's the last 7 years of his career have been like him just in a movie playing himself. So it's like,
script.
Yeah, like what's the calculated decision or the calculated statement Bron's going to put out? Embiid, I just think when you ask him a question, he just gives you an honest answer. So I don't want to kill him too much for what he's saying, but at the same time, I just think he's had some weird statements. So I think that could put him in a situation for a potential, losing where he is in the day-to-day rankings, especially if he hasn't been performing the way he has, or the way he hasn't been in the warm-up game so far.
Yeah, he's kind of like entering Harry Kane territory. Like, if they don't win the gold, like it's like, well, this team's guaranteed to win, and Embiid's going to definitely be their center. And then if he either isn't their center by the end of the tournament, or if they lose, then it's just going to be like, yep, see, Embiid can't win anything with them. As great as he is, and as much as he's been at the top of those MVP rankings, he's just not that
You're saying
level guy.
you're saying if the Cavs really didn't want the Warriors to win the title in 17 and 18, they should have found a way to facilitate a 3-team trade to get Embiid to Golden State?
Think about that. If it was Embiid instead of KD on Golden State.
Golden State. That would have been fun, but...
All right, so football. It's right around the corner.
Hitting all the major sports today.
Got to. I wanted to get a topic, that everyone can kind of sink their teeth into. Now, this is something that I actually was talking to one of my buddies on the phone with about last night or yesterday. And I was really thinking, what does it really take to win a Super Bowl? Because there's a lot of teams that have won it different ways. People are like, oh, you need the quarterback. And it's like, okay, then why the hell did Joe Flacco win it? And it's like, oh, you need the really good defense. And it's like, well, then why did the Chiefs win it? Not this past year, but in years past, why have the Chiefs won it when their defense has been pretty bad? But then their offense is just so high powered. It's like, oh, well, you need the coach. But then Super Bowl winning coaches have also been being like, oh, well, that guy got lucky that one year. I don't think anyone's calling the Giants coach, Coughlin. I don't think anyone's calling him an all-time coach and stuff like that. So I sent Chad out a list of 6 things, all right, which are the quarterback, pass rushers, the coach, playmakers on their first contract, specifically, an offensive line, and a clear style of play. And what we're gonna do, Chad's gonna kind of lead us, all right, and we are going to rank these things as to from least important to most important in winning a Super Bowl. So I don't know if you actually have ranked these things in your head or on paper, but why don't you give me which of these do you think is the least important? And again, when we say least important, it's not like, well, if you don't have this, then you're still good. You can still win the Super Bowl. It's like you still need to have this to a certain extent, but it's just the least important of these very, very key things to winning the Super Bowl. Well, sorry, before that, was there one thing that wasn't on the list that was like, man, I really think actually this might be maybe even more important than these things, but definitely, is at least, 7th or 8th if it's not listed?
Not necessarily. I think there are some parts that some of the things fall into one of the topics that is going to be discussed. So I don't think it necessarily needed to be its own topic, but yeah, I think for the most part you have it covered with these 6. So I like it.
Let's get into our number 6 or your number 6. What do you think is the least important of these on the list?
I think it's going to be play style, and if I understand the way you were talking about it correctly, it's the identity of teams. When you look at the Chiefs, obviously the past 2 years, their identity has been, quarterback, offense dependent, although their defense has been very good the past 2 years, which is, it was honestly 2 years ago, it was probably the reason they ended up winning the Super Bowl.
Like Maurice Jones-Drew said, they rode the D to the Super Bowl.
I'm gonna let you stick with that quote. I'm not even gonna say anything about that one. I don't want to get canceled first episode, so I'm good. But yeah, play style. I think when you're talking about most of the elite teams, a lot of them play a similar style. Like when we're talking about the elite teams, they're all going to have a quarterback at a baseline level where you can put a lot of stuff on the quarterback's plate and he's going to be asked to make a lot of plays. That's really the modern game. When you're talking about really the elite teams in the NFL or even semi-elite teams, I think the one that maybe you can say may not have that truly elite quarterback play is maybe the Lions with Goff. And even him, he's been really good for them the past 2 years. Had a great, I think 31-7 touchdown interception ratio 2 years ago. So had that long streak of no interceptions this year as well. But I just think he's in that game manager role. The rest of the guys we're talking about, they're special guys, right? So the play style is always going to be dependent, I feel like, on the quarterback. Because if you have a quarterback that you can lean on, you're going to lean on him because it just makes the rest of the thing easier. And defense, while you're saying, no one's going into the season saying, all right, let's have a bad defense. Let's try and be around 25th, 28th, something like that, and still try and go win the Super Bowl. It gets, I'm stepping on other topics, but obviously when it comes to defense, the number one thing with the defense is going to be the pass rush. So you're going to try and build that out and then work around the rest of the defense as you can. But I don't think style-wise, it's like like I would love to know the research, and maybe I should have done it, but the research of like a 3-4 versus a 4-3. You know, what type of base has won the most Super Bowls? But even that, I feel like is irrelevant in today's game because a lot of the base is 4-2-5. Teams are just playing nickel as their base because of the amount of passing that's going on in the league right now, and the amount of speed guys out there. You know, you want guys who can run sideline to sideline and tackle. So play style, that's why it's 6 for me.
Yeah, because that was the thing that I was thinking is like basically everyone plays the same. They know that you're going to have to pass the ball, especially in a lot of these big playoff games. You see quarterbacks throwing, you know, upwards of 40, 50 times in a game, and running backs turn into just more like a fourth or fifth receiver a lot of times, and you're not even really using those guys out of the backfield unless you have like an elite guy, which I haven't really seen a lot of elite running backs in the past, you know, decade, really. Guys that are just like, hey, we're going to hand this guy the ball 30 times a game, and he's going to run for 130 yards and 2 scores. I mean, outside of a guy like Derrick Henry, who hasn't had the playoff success, not like him personally, but like he hasn't been on teams that have been in the mix for that. Outside of guys like Derrick Henry and a little bit of Christian McCaffrey, even though he's kind of been used like that a little bit more recently too, as like just another guy that's like, hey, we're just going to get you out in the flat and we're going to throw you the ball and you're just going to make a play, things like that. So I assumed that play style was going to be near the bottom. Let's get your number 5.
Yeah, number 5 is actually going to be playmakers on their first contract. Now, and look, kind of like you said at the top, obviously in a perfect world, you're going to want all of these things because that's what makes a team a Super Bowl team. You know, like no one's sitting there going, man, this team has 5 or 6 flaws, but we think they can win the Super Bowl. The only team that ever gets that treatment is Dallas in the preseason. So, you know, you're going to want all of these things.
You're going to be competing for the Super Bowl this year. No, you said that.
Exactly. Come on, Stephen A. But yeah, so playmaker on their first contract, and you know, maybe unfairly, I'm using the Chiefs as the example for the past couple of years. You know, they've had Kelsey, who's really been their big playmaker, and granted, he's the tight end, but we're really talking about, you know, receiver type with him, and he's been on an expensive deal, and then they've been able to piecemeal around it. Now, I think having playmakers that are in the rotation is super important. But if you're talking about like having a, you know, Justin Jefferson before he got his big deal, or you know, CeeDee Lamb on the Cowboys before he gets whatever deal he's going to sign, you know, all that stuff, I don't think it has to necessarily be to that level, but I think you have to have like your 2 or your 3 guy, certainly, because that's where it really kills you. I think in today's NFL, you can afford, because the salary cap jumps 10 to 20 million every single year, you can afford to pay the quarterback and pay the number 1 receiver, I feel like. But as you're seeing with teams like the Bengals right now, when you start getting that second guy who's saying, hey, I want 25 to 30 million a year as well, that's where I think it starts to become untenable, because you can't mix that and, you know, afford to pay a competent defense and offensive line. So I think the playmaker on the first contract is 5th. It's good to have the guys that can play, but it doesn't have to be your number 1 receiver or your star guy.
Well, the main guy I thought of when I said this was a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, because when I was watching the Chiefs this year in the playoffs, that seemed to be like the guy that, I mean, obviously Mahomes is going to be at the forefront of people's minds, but he seemed like the guy that the commentators and the other teams seemed to be like, man, like this Pacheco guy is just going to get 80 yards on us, and there's not really much we can do on it. And when you have a quarterback like Mahomes and you're still able to hand the ball off on 3rd and 3 and know you're going to get a first down, that's kind of invaluable. And if you're a guy, I think he was a 7th round guy 2 years ago, and it's like if you have a guy that's on that cheap of a contract making that much of an impact, where the best quarterback in the NFL is like, you know, we can just trust this guy. Let's just give it to him on 1st and 2nd down, and he's going to make it 3rd and manageable at the very, very least, if not picking up another first down or getting in the end zone. And so that was the main guy I was thinking of on that.
Okay.
And then
I just think the running back position, pretty much for the most part, 90% of the guys that these teams are going to have are going to be guys on cheaper deals anyway. At the running back spot, unless you're
plays on that deal.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So that's why when I'm thinking about the playmaker, I'd look more at the receiver spot. But that's a fair point.
Yeah. So you're number 4, all right? And why is it offensive line?
No. It's actually going to be pass rusher. Now, I think when you're talking, I think these 4 things, these last 4 that we're getting into, 4 to 1, these are teams that are things that you absolutely have to have to a certain level.
Their own But
Yeah. 5'6". You know, we talked about play style. It's not that it's not important, but I mean, shoot, even when you just talked about Pacheco, you know, the Chiefs valuing him and even though they have the best quarterback in the league, not being like, all right, we're going to completely abandon the run, you know. So that obviously play style is important, the playmakers is important, but these four things, starting with pass rusher, I think are just essential to being a really good team because it allows the rest of your defense to maybe be at a level below. You know, having a great front four can nullify whatever disadvantage you're at when it comes to the receivers the other team has versus your secondary. You know, I feel like most secondaries are at a disadvantage compared to the receiving groups they're going against in today's NFL. You know, but being able to have that pass rusher, that pass rushing unit, because it's not just about having one guy. That's the thing about Dallas, you know, who's, you know, I know people are going to cringe, but they've had one of the best defenses over the past couple of years. It's about having multiple guys in a rotation that can get you, you know, it's about, you know, Parsons, obviously the number one guy who can get you 15 to 20, but then having other guys who can mix in, get you 5, 7, 8, guys who can win one-on-one blocks, you know, against the weakest offensive lineman on the other team because they're putting the two best guys on your best pass rusher. So I think pass rush is super important. That's, you know, we've talked about the Chiefs the past 2 years. Their pass rush has improved significantly from what it was when they were just giving up 40, 50 points to anybody that stepped on the field. You know, Chris Jones with that interior pressure, huge. I think Karlaftis, who has really blossomed into a really good defensive or overall well-rounded defensive end, since coming out of Purdue, like I really think that was a huge piece as to why they've won the Super Bowl the past couple of years. Pass rush is so important.
Yeah, especially like just how much more momentum killer it is. If you have a guy like, again,
Absolutely.
not everyone's not gonna have Mahomes, but if you have the decent quarterback, which again we haven't even gotten to yet, so you see how important it is. But if you have a decent quarterback, it's going to put points on the board, and you're up 20-10 in the middle of the third quarter. The other team's driving. And then you just get a sack, and now it's 3rd and 15 when it was just 2nd and 5, and it's just like, oh my god, man! Like now we got to pick up 3rd and impossible against a guy that can still get another sack if we drop back and I hang back in the pocket for 5 seconds. Like it's a real momentum killer and turning 2nd and manageable into 3rd and impossible, and then just killing drives and boom, we get the ball back. Now we have the ball up 20-10 and. Yeah, that pass rush is really, and I think slightly underrated as well. So I was glad that you put it near the top of your list.
And to even go along in the pass rush, it's with the athleticism today's quarterbacks have. You know, when you're talking Mahomes, Josh Allen, I mean Lamar Jackson's on a different level, and Kyler Murray is too, even though he's not, you know, obviously on a contending team. But it's about being disciplined in your rush lanes too. You know, you get the guys when those ends get behind the quarterback. And then it's like 2-on-4 on the you know front end of it. It's kind of over at that point. So being able to be disciplined, that's what the 49ers were beautiful at their whole really past couple seasons. They've been beautiful at being disciplined in their rush lanes. And that's what makes them have like probably the best defensive line in the league over the past couple years. So
yeah,
that's an added factor. You hinted at it with the number 3. You thought it was going to be 4. Offensive line. I still think is huge. Like I said, these are all super important. Offensive line, you know, look, it's 3rd, you know, because the other 2 are just more important. But I think when you were talking about the value of Pacheco, right, when you were saying, oh, you know, we know they have Mahomes, but you got to stop Pacheco. He's getting 80, 90 yards every single game. That's because the Chiefs have a great offensive line, specifically on the interior. You know, with Humphrey, Tooney, and Trey Smith, the right guard. They invest in their offensive line, and it may not be the traditional investing as far as like, all right, we're gonna, you know, get the most expensive guy in free agency every year, or use our top draft pick every year, but they use a lot of draft picks and a lot of cap space to sign these offensive linemen. So clearly, it's important. You look at other teams that have been competing recently. The Eagles, they have a great offensive line. The Detroit Lions have had a really good offensive line the past couple of years. Excuse me. I would argue with the Bengals and the Bills, that's kind of been the thing that's held those two teams back, right? They haven't had that consistent line. They haven't been able to consistently establish the running game in big games.
Well, I like
you know, they've turned it.
went the opposite way of this, and they were like, hey, instead of getting a good O-line, we're just going to get
It
weapons.
was horrible.
We're just
Yeah, exactly.
We're just going to get weapons so that we don't even need an offensive line because one of our 3 weapons is going to be open. So we're just going to say screw the offensive line and get weapons. And did get them to a Super Bowl. So, I mean, I can't fault it too much, but I enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's really a great point. Because, like you said, it got him to a Super Bowl, but at the same time,
and then
you think about
got sacked like 33 times.
Yeah, I was gonna say you think about the biggest plays of that Super Bowl. The Cooper Kupp catch, obviously, but then that Aaron Donald sack, he gets that easy interior pressure, and it's right there. So offensive line, I think, is huge. Offensive line is huge.
All right, so now we're down to the nitty gritty, 2-1. Why don't you just say what number 1 is, and then obviously number 2 will be implied.
That's good. You're like the first person I've seen who's kind of done it that way. I like that because then it's like they would always do that in the NBA draft lottery where they'd reveal the team that got 2, and then it's the other team who just starts celebrating, and it's like what's going on? Yeah. So number 1, I think probably to no one's surprise that really follows the NFL, it's got to be quarterback. I mean, all of these other things that we talked about 2 through 6 can be nullified if you have an elite quarterback. I truly do feel that way. You talk about offensive line and the playmakers and stuff. Look at a team like the Houston Texans, and I'm not saying C.J. Stroud is the best quarterback in the NFL, but he was able to nullify a team that had not a great offensive line and didn't have a lot of playmakers people were writing home about going into this season, and he turned them into a playoff team.
Wait, so I'm confused.
Oh God.
I thought.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going.
I thought that like a quarterback, even someone that important, couldn't come into a team and like completely turn it around if they were really, really good. I thought you had to have like the other 52 guys on your roster be like near the best in their position in order to be really, really good. Because that's what I learned from Justin Fields, Kyler Murray, all those other guys that are like, if they had a good O-line and they had all these weapons, like. The C.J. Stroud.
Hell, even Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has been on that tour for multiple years.
He's been so good. He's been so. This is when you know you're a really good quarterback. Is that when people try to be like, oh, this guy is also really good. It's like, oh, who's really good receiver? Valdez Scantling. It's like,
no. It's like, nah, he's not. No one ever wanted Valdez Scantling.
At the beginning, or like the beginning, middle part of the year, it was like, yo, Kadarius Toney's making plays. Like, he's pretty good. It's like, no, he sucks. They have the best quarterback in the whole league. And that's how it's been with C.J. Stroud. People are like, yo, Tank Dell, he's a baller, bro. He's tough. It's like, no, they have they probably have the best first contract quarterback in the entire NFL. So that's probably why he's playing well now.
Yeah, exactly. So no one was going into the season saying, shoot, Nico Collins, I need him on every fantasy team. But then all of a sudden, midway through the year, it's like, shit, can I get him as my number 1 receiver?
Yeah.
He was really good. And now, they add Diggs to that group. I'm worried about Diggs, but I just think the quarterback position, and not just talking about Stroud, but talking about just overall, I mean, look, as we talked about earlier, all of the teams that are in the contender category, it's no surprise that they're all the best quarterbacks in the NFL because it's just the most important position. So,
the only thing that I would want to kind of pick your brain about is that there have been guys. I mean, Super Bowl, whatever it was, like 10 years ago, in like 2012, when it was Ravens 49ers. I mean, that's kind of interesting evidence to the contrary because, I mean, you have Kaepernick, a guy who was out of the league a couple of years later, and then Flacco, who made some deal with the devil and was throwing passes. He was throwing passes to the Texans, but for the Browns in the playoffs this past year. But he was really good at the end of the regular season, and so I'd be interested to see like kind of what your take is on maybe what the avenue is for a team without a good quarter. Obviously, you just need an unreal defense. But, like, I don't even know. Do you think in the modern day, because a lot of things have changed since that time, do you think it's even possible to string together, like, again, we haven't talked about good coach yet. Is it possible to coach a team to be like, all right, our defense is going to give up 15 to 20 points a game and that's it? How do we then create a system where our mediocre quarterback can then take us to maybe a conference championship or even a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think the the thing about it is you look at a team like the 49ers, I'm not calling Brock Purdy a bad quarterback, but I think he's,
nowhere near as talented as the guys that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Going into the season, you would have said he's league average, maybe slightly above. But when you have just, like you said, an amazing defense, amazing playmakers, in San Francisco, they hit the trifecta with it because they have an amazing offensive coach as well. With Shanahan. No, Kingsbury's with. He's someone's offensive coordinator this year. I forgot who it was, but
it should be
that Permian. I think it's Washington. I think Kingsbury might have that Washington OC job. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, talking about like San Francisco, the quarterback spot. I think the thing is, in the modern game, the baseline level of quarterbacking has gotten so high because the importance of the position. Like, even a quote-unquote middle-of-the-road quarterback is still a lot better than, a middle-of-the-road quarterback 10 to 15 years ago, just before all the quarterback camps and the elite this, elite that. Kind of the same thing we were talking about basketball players, but even more exponential for the high school and college quarterback because we know the position is just so important. I think you can still be that good, but it's just hard. Or I think you can still be a good team, but like you said, you just have to be well-rounded in all the other areas, including coaching, which I do want to hit on really quickly. I think just the two things that coaching brings, that where you were asking me earlier, what is coach, or what are maybe some areas that we maybe left out. The two specific ones that I think coaching brings are special teams and toughness. I think you can't be a bad special teams team, and compete in a situation that we're in. The mental toughness aspect I think is huge as well. Like mental toughness is easily the number one most important trait, I think, when it comes to winning teams. Like the Chiefs have had great mental toughness the past couple of years. I think the 49ers have had really good mental toughness. The Bengals, when they went to that next level with Burrow, I think it's because their mental toughness got a lot stronger. So I think that's what good coaching and, with the quarterback as well, but I think that's what those two things really kind of bring to the table.
Yeah, and even I like to joke about the position because I used to kick, obviously, but even if you look at teams that won multiple Super Bowls or even just Super Bowls recently, you got Harrison Butker winning for the Chiefs. You got guys like obviously Vinatieri won multiple. All right, you got guys like and it's weird to say that as they have a kicker, whatever. But a lot of times the guys that have the good kicker are Roberto Aguayo. You're not going to win the Super Bowl with Roberto Aguayo as your kicker. However many years ago he came in the league, and that's one of those things where it's you need reliability. I think that was one of the things that I didn't put on there, where it's just it's difficult to kind of quantify, but what you're going to get every single week. It's we know, even if you don't have those guys that are going to take the top off the defense, we got guys that will get open and catch the ball. We got guys that will do their blocking assignment. We got guys that we know are not going to fumble the football. We got guys that on 3rd and 5 are not going to jump offside. We got guys that are going to do those things, and that makes it a lot easier for your whole football team knowing, please don't jump offside, please don't jump offside, please don't jump offside.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly.
It's a lot easier to coach your team when you know, all right, Pat's not going to turn over the ball. Travis is going to be open on 3rd and 6. Pacheco's not going to fumble the football.
Exactly.
Chris Jones
and
is
that's
going to
all
jump
down to
outside
coaching.
on 3rd and 4. All this other stuff.
Yeah.
Then you can worry about the football stuff and not have to worry about, am I going to get this, that, the other. Harrison Butker is going to make a 40-yarder. Everything can be a lot easier if you have that reliability in your team.
Absolutely. Well said, man.
So we got our final rankings were from 6 to 1. Number 6 would be the play style, kind of how the team operates, how their offense and defense play. Number 5, playmakers on their first contract. That's pretty self-explanatory. Number 4, pass rush. Number 3, offensive line. Number 2, having that real elite good coach. And, of course, number 1, and why your boy in Green Bay just became the richest football player of all time, having the quarterback. Because that's what happens when you put up 130,000 points on the Cowboys
Dallas
in the wild card round.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
we're about done. I just wanted to ask you one really quick question. Just
Absolutely.
taking, again, just quick little thing. College Football 25 has come out now. I think
Yes,
you
it
haven't
has.
played it.
I have not. We're going to be leaning on you because I know you've played it.
And what I just wanted to know was because I know for a fact, we used to play all the time, NCAA 13 and 14 a lot when we were growing up. NCAA football for 13 and 14. So,
Yeah.
what is that thing that makes either college football or just what do gamers want out of a college football game? And so I wanted to just quickly, give a little bit of my thoughts and
Yeah,
maybe you can
absolutely.
jump in. I think the thing that differentiates college football from any of the pro football game, or really just pro sports games in general, is how small it is. Because even if you have a guy that you fall in love with,
Yeah.
recruiting and now the transfer portal, things like that, you're going to have them for 1 to 3, 4 years, and that's it. Even if you
Yeah.
end up having a redshirt guy, you have him for 5 years. I think it gets stale when you're playing Madden because it's I'm playing against the Chargers in the year 2037, and they're playing freaking Justin Herbert's their quarterback. Oh, we're playing against this team, and they still have, they have Austin Eckler's corpse in their backfield,
So you're saying the freshness of it actually adds to the aspect or
Which is
adds to the
interesting
level.
because you would think, oh, I get to have this guy on my team forever, and so now, like in FIFA, when you play Karimo, it's oh, I got to have this 19-year-old guy on my team, and now I get to have him for the next 15 years. This is going to be awesome, blah, blah, blah. But for me personally, that's why I don't end up playing career modes for very long. Or I didn't back when I played FIFA, and I didn't end up playing, Madden franchise modes for very long, and I didn't end up playing my NHL GM modes for very long because it's yeah, I got the same guys. Let's see if we can re-sign them. Oh, we lost one guy, but for the most part, we got the same team. It's every single time that you get a guy that you really, really like, it's oh, I got a sophomore quarterback. I'm having for 3 more years. But in the back of your mind, you're always damn, when this dude graduates, who are we gonna do? Am I gonna have Joe Random playing quarterback for me next year because I didn't recruit or whatever? And I think that's the part that really, really differentiates it, and especially going more than 10 years not having a game. That's what I think makes it really interesting for gamers, is being I always have to be on my toes. As soon as I lose my running back, then as soon as I lock down my running back position, now I got to fix my O-line. Oh, my O-line, my D-line sucks now, and things like that. Just the constant in and out and having to figure stuff out every year rather than being well, I got my quarterback under a 5-year contract, got my running back in a 5-year contract, I got this guy on that contract, and filling the gap from there. For the most part in college, it's you have to improve every single year, because if you just look up after your redshirt senior quarterback graduates or gets drafted, you can't just be ooh, okay, now
Joe Schmo, you're next.
Rated quarterback who's gonna walk into Happy Valley next year in week 1 and hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, I understand now, because at first I was I didn't really agree when you were talking about the constant evolution being something that entices people, but the way you're explaining it, I think it makes a lot of sense, actually, because that evolution of the challenge, there's always going to be a new challenge in front of you, and I do think that's what people want, in any sort of game, because like you said, even in FIFA, you end up doing a career mode there, you kind of build your squad out in the first year, and then all of a sudden it's all right, shoot, what's the next challenge? Can I go undefeated? Can I win the treble? You're just kind of boring yourself with stuff versus in NCAA, like you said. I think there's more evolution from the other teams too, which kind of adds to that newness of the challenge every single year. So, because you're kind of competing against the unknown.
And even just the way recruiting works, in FIFA, I don't know really how it is now because I haven't really played FIFA in a couple years, but in FIFA 19, FIFA 20 time, you could literally put in a bid, negotiate with the club, then it gets accepted, and then later that same day you can negotiate the contract with the player, and then boom, he's your player, just like that. And it's you can't do that in college football. It's oh my god, I'm in the SEC now, and I'm using Texas, my favorite team. It's dang, I lost that dude to Alabama. I lost that dude to Tennessee. Now I'm competing with Oklahoma for that guy. Now I'm competing with Florida with that guy. Oh, now that dude wants to go out west, and he wants to play for Cal, and he wants to play constantly competing against other teams, and then seeing the other teams with your guy. It's see, man, if you would have came here, then you would be up 70-3 and not down 70-3 or something like that, or like that guy
I
makes
heard
a
a
big
little,
play.
heard a little Chris Tucker in your voice there when you said "C-Man." C-Man, I could see him seeing that in one of the rush hours.
Yeah, exactly. It's just
Oh,
I think
no.
having something like that around and just something new and fresh. I hope,
Yeah.
especially the big game companies, start to sort of take notes down and being like, could we get a college basketball game back? Could we get maybe even go even crazier? I mean, in the past there's been games for markets that don't have a huge following. There's been college baseball games before. I think there's even like a Major League Lacrosse game or something like that from like
Wow.
AAA, from like these big companies. It's like, who's gonna throw their hands up and be like, you know what, we're gonna make like a really, really good high school football game. I saw that there's one
Yeah.
called like Varsity Football that's being created right now, but it's in a very, very primitive stage of its development. But who's gonna take that chance and be like, gamers really like something, and I'm not saying the same franchise, but gamers, they would like a backyard baseball type of game, something where it's simple, it's not really affiliated with a company, it's just something
Yeah.
where gamers can just pick it up and have fun and play online with their friends. And that's what it seems to be like people are doing with college football. No one's like, oh man, the gameplay is this or the whatever is this. It's like, no, I just want to pick it up. It's fun game. It's like fun enough gameplay, and it's something that we haven't seen in a while. So will it get stale in the future? Probably, but then you just
Yeah.
have to evolve, change a little bit more again. And now
Yeah.
there's one last thing that I did not tell you about.
Oh God. Oh God.
Fan question of the day. All right,
Okay. I'm glad we've already got fans before the first episode. That's pretty impressive.
this comes in from
That's
Savannah
pretty-
Cook. Okay,
Okay. Never heard of that listener.
and she asks, what is your dream sports vacation? If you had 1 week to be like, hey, you can go wherever, to whatever event, wherever it may be, and you can go for 1 week to have a dream sports vacation, where would you go? What would you watch?
God, honestly, I think really just because I love basketball so much, I feel like it would just have to be the finals. You know what? This would be. A lot of people might think it's wrong just because of, the stakes aren't as high, but I think All-Star Weekend for the NBA would probably be awesome. Just because I think the collection of people, because ultimately, look, it's cool to watch basketball live and see how players are, but not sitting there saying I'm bragging or anything. But I've been to professional basketball games. I know what the guys look like when they're playing, and I've also played basketball a time or two before. So that's from that perspective, I'm not gonna be like, oh man. But when I get to see stars, whether they're out and about, because that's the thing, you'll see them out and about, maybe in the city, depending on where it is. You'll watch them. You'll get to see them in an all-star type environment where they're able to play, do the stuff that us fans kind of want to see. Even the most complex of us, we're elementary in a way. It's like, hey, I want to see guys do cool dunks and hit deep threes. That's still fun to watch no matter how much of a basketball nerd you are. So I think All-Star Weekend, especially just because of all the festivities that kind of go into it, you really get that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so it could really be a true... I know you said a week, but to me, I think a week is just kind of hard depending on what sport you're talking about, just because you're not going to be... there's not really going to be action, I would think, every single day, or peak action every single day throughout a week. Versus, I think if it's an extended weekend type of thing, I think the NBA All-Star Weekend would be awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick with that.
Because that plays into what I was going to say. Because I
Oh,
was
God.
thinking, like you said, how can you get it to where you're in a week-long scenario where
Yeah.
there's stuff going on, there's stuff happening, and I
Yeah.
was like, and then this is kind of not really real. Obviously the competition's real and the whatever, but kind of combining where I would want to go with what I would want to
Yeah.
see. But a World
Uh-huh.
Cup in either Italy or Greece, I think would be just absolutely unreal, because those are two of the
Yeah.
places probably in the world that I've wanted to go the most on vacation.
That would make sense too.
And then if you have, especially during the group stage, I know it'd be oh well, I'd want to see the World Cup final, but if you just see football constantly from sun up to sundown, there's just constant teams playing and obviously representing their country, and you get to be around it and you get to be in it,
Yeah.
and you get to be
Yeah.
where it all is going. It's all kind of in somewhat central locations, even if you pick just one or two places. Then I think that's something that would be really, really cool in the way that you're able to like see the highest quality of football in a foreign country, go and do what you need, or go and do, you know, all the things that you want to do with it, see all the players, be with the fans, all that stuff. I think that'd probably be my dream vacation. So we covered a lot of topics today. I appreciate you for your time, you know. And you guys, let us know. What do you want to listen to? You know, what do you want to hear us talk about? Is there topics? Are there different sports you want us to talk about? Obviously, we got Olympics coming up. There's still a lot of stuff to do with a lot of off seasons, but please let us know. What do you guys think? What kind of improvements can we make? Do you want it shorter? Do you want it, you know, broken up a little bit more? Let us know what you guys want to hear, and please give us your feedback. We should be back next week. Hopefully make this a consistent thing. And thank you guys for listening. All right, we'll take off for now.